I'd wanted to act all my life when I was a little girl, and then I dropped the dream. But the pain was so excruciating when my parents divorced and we sold our family home in which I was raised. Everything I knew and loved had ended. And I was in this boarding school, and I would get in trouble from the nuns if I was caught writing my mother a letter, when I was supposed to be sleeping, or if I was crying all the time. So I just learned to hide my feelings and to go, I guess, what I call dead inside.
Welcome to a new episode of Shop Talk with Writers, the podcast where we are curious about the stories behind the books. I'm Elena Lappin, and the story behind today's really special guest, the multi-talented American actress Sharon Gless, is my own obsession with watching and rewatching television shows from TV's golden era, the 1970s and 80s. One of my favorites is the groundbreaking police series Cagney and Lacey, featuring two women police officers, Christine Cagney, played by Sharon Gless, and Mary Beth Lacey, played by Tyne Daly. They're both fascinating characters, tough and fragile, fearless and insecure, and often very funny. After 7 seasons of Cagney and Lacey, both stars went on to play many other roles. So I was thrilled to discover that Sharon Gless, now in her 80s, has written a wonderful memoir called Apparently There Were Complaints. It has her own unmistakable voice, full of self-deprecating humor, honesty, and brilliant storytelling. I think actors' memoirs are a treasure trove of stories and histories. Here is Sharon Gless reading from her autobiography, Apparently There Were Complaints. Please forgive a few technical glitches during this remote recording in bad weather.
This is Sharon Gless. I am reading the final chapter 46, of my autobiography called Apparently There Were Complaints. The name of this chapter is called The Wish. A thunderstorm blew across South Miami tonight. The lightning cracked the sky all the way down to the horizon, right before the dark clouds dropped torrents of rain. There's an electrical charge in the air during a storm, which I believe holds great power. I always make a wish on that energy, hoping that it might become a reality. I know my wishes are always heard. Sometimes what I ask for is what I get. Other times, I get something I didn't realize I wanted. Like that bolt of lightning, something I never wished for enters my life. It was never my wish to write a book, ever. In 2013, I was invited to a meeting at CBS, where all the brass was present, the heads of comedy, drama, and new series. "Welcome home, Sharon," said the president of entertainment. Wow. Okay. For 1 hour, I told the TV decision makers some of the stories from my life. They smiled, they laughed, they listened intently. I had them in the palm of my hand. I had walked in eager to talk about the possibility of a new TV series. I walked out with a book deal to write my life story. Apparently, they thought the stories that came to me so easily in that CBS office would translate quickly to the page. But in fact, it has taken me 8 years from book contract to bookshelf. Here's the deal. I'm an actress. That's what I do. I know how to be in character, but how to be in Sharon Gless and put it in writing on the page, that was a different story. Being free of alcohol, drugs, and cigarettes, and doing my best to corral my cravings for carbs made it seem even more daunting. Every story I wrote became a mirror, with no smoke or inebriated focus to blur the reflection. Every memory magnified elements of myself I had never taken the time to define. From my determination to succeed to my deep self-doubt. From my shyness in social interactions to my drive to entertain the masses. From my eternal optimism that I will know what to do and how to do it, to my ever-present feeling of not being enough. Then there was the overall fear of being boring, and yet having the balls to do it anyway. I realized that I have seldom felt as though I belong, in adolescence, in adulthood, or in life. Socially, I have always felt like an outsider. The only time I was sure of myself was when I was playing someone else, when I could shapeshift, slip into someone else's skin, and hide in plain sight. It's okay. I'm in therapy. It's probably something most actors share. I found Sharon Gless to be generous and needy, forgiving and flippant, one who persistently preserves the past with diligence and has equally walked away from something she valued to avoid confrontation with others. I am loyal to those I love and as lonely as a foster child left on her doorstep. I've discovered that the one consistent love of my life has always been my acting career. It is my descendant, my own growing child. I've cherished and nurtured it for 5 decades. I've never had a gimmick or a killer body or drop-dead looks. I have no university degree in theater or film. I speak only one language, albeit in a husky voice, which I'm told is recognizable. I'm genuinely a stranger to the actor's practice of craft and technique. Like all of life, I go with my gut. I'm clueless about the structure of a script. I do, however, know if it doesn't feel true. My best trait is that I will forever be a willing and enthusiastic student of this filthy business. Somehow I learned to put it all together, and it worked for me, despite an occasional complaint. No matter, even the complaints, more than the compliments, helped form me. Most were accurate, some are funny, now, some hurt me, and some just made me angry enough to win anyway. Over the past 50 years, I've been able to turn out a number of memorable performances. As for the many women and the one man I've played, it's been an honor. Tonight's downpour of rain reminded me of the very first time I absolutely knew to my core that I belonged in this business. It wasn't during a thunderstorm. Los Angeles doesn't have many of those. It happened at Universal Studios in the 70s. Most nights, I'd stay in my trailer long after the day's filming had ended and the rest of the cast and crew had gone home. I loved being there, savoring the dark silence of 1 a.m. and the smell of the evening rain on the studio asphalt. I didn't have a driver in those early days, so I would take the long walk to my car in the darkness, guided by the lights on the corners of the now empty sound stages. I wouldn't see one other person as I made my way across the lot, not one. Even the tower, which housed Lou Wasserman and all the other big executives, would be completely dark. Universal Studios was my private home late at night. I owned it, all by myself. They paid me every day to come to this make-believe world and perform. And every night I'd leave knowing that the next day I'd get to return to this place where everyone shared the same goal, to create magic on film. In the morning, Scotty, the gate guard, would welcome me back. My very own hair and makeup people would be waiting with all of the pots and paint set up to help turn me into someone's else. I knew everyone, and they knew me. They cared about me. We laughed all day long. We were good at what we did. We made television. For 10 years, I was an MCA Universal Studios contract player, and remarkably, I was the very last one to leave the lot when the contract system came to an end. I am the last contract player in the history of Hollywood. A lucrative career waited for me on the other side of the Universal gates in 1982, and thanks to everything I had learned from the studio people who taught me, those years were my rosebud. Every story in this book is a memory of the people who influenced my life, the guardians of my childhood years, my siblings, my young girlfriends who shaped my humor, the men I've loved, most of whom stay forever young in my memory, the professionals who guided and nurtured me and took a chance on my career, and my fellow performers, most of whom I will always count as my friends. That's it. I won't take the long walk across my own story again. I'm more intrigued with the possibility of taking on another life, a new character, a new role. I look forward to meeting her and becoming her. There's time. I'm going to live forever. So far, so good.
Sharon Gless, thank you so much for this amazing reading. It was absolutely beautiful. And thank you for writing
Elena,
this
I'm
book.
so glad you recommended that. I'm so glad you recommended that chapter, because that's not the one I had prepared, but it's one of my favorites. So thank you.
It is absolutely brilliant, this chapter. I think for people who haven't read the book, who may know you as the Sharon Gless, but not the Sharon Gless who wrote this memoir, I think they will be very intrigued and will want to read the book.
Oh, thank you.
So I very recently, literally binge watched all 7 seasons of Cagney and Lacey.
Oh, my goodness.
And then I discovered, it was very funny actually, because my husband kept trying to watch something else every night. And I said, no, I'm watching another Cagney and Lacey tonight. I have to keep going. And then he would reluctantly sit down and watch. And then he would say, how come television was so much better then?
I don't know.
And it was. Why was it so much better? It was. Do you think so too? Because it was so honest.
Yes, I do. I shouldn't say that, because the actors are wonderful who are performing now, but the stories all seem old to me. When we were shooting Cagney and Lacey, each day was a day of discovery. There'd never been 2 women on television before in a drama. And the stories we explored were just ripe, and I was one of the 2 fortunate actresses who got to play those roles.
Well, the stories were so incredibly open.
Our story seemed more raw than what you see today, because they'd never been explored. Nobody had ever asked us how we felt, right?
They were fearlessly presented, fearlessly shown. As actors and as writers and as directors, you all went so deep. And it resonates to this day. I think it's incredibly real till now and forever. So,
well,
and it's
Elena,
interesting because,
Elena, we had the writing, we had the scripts, we had those writers that delving into stories that had never been told about women. And of the 6 years we were on the air, that Tyne and I were on the air, no other actress ever won the Emmy. Either Tyne or I won. Not because we were so brilliant. We had the material. The material was wonderful, and the writers were brilliant. And it was all undiscovered stories,
Did you contribute to the writing?
Sometimes. I mean, we had wonderful writers. But sometimes I did, if I disagreed with how I thought Cagney would react to something. I became very territorial about her.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because in this chapter that you read, you mentioned inhabiting a role, a persona as an actress, and doing it very differently when you are the writer. What is the main difference? So specifically, on Cagney and Lacey, you played Cagney's struggle with alcoholism and joining AA and so on. That was before it actually happened in your life.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I didn't join AA until after Cagney and Lacey.
And how would you compare the experience of playing it and then writing about it as your own experience?
It was very different. Very different, because I didn't understand alcoholism, and I don't think Christine Cagney did either. She was not a welcome recipient She never wanted to go to meetings, and she was always trouble. That's why I loved playing her. She was always a bit cantankerous and funny and flippant to cover up her own softness. Forgive me, I'm just sort of free associating here, and I forget exactly what.
Sure.
How did Christine Cagney's alcoholism affect my own?
Yeah.
Was that your question, or?
Well, my question was how was the writing process different?
Well, I didn't write it. I'm not a writer. Those wonderful scripts were written by prose.
No, I know, but you wrote the book.
There was one moment in playing Christine the drunk. There was one moment where I asked the writers if they'd please let me sit on the ground with my head on the sofa, because I remembered being loaded and getting the whirlies. So I needed to put my head down on a sofa. But if I laid down on the floor, I'd get the whirlies again. So I knew exactly how to stop it. And they wrote it in for me. And a lot of people who have suffered with alcoholism said, "Oh, I know that one." Mm. So I was handed brilliant writers who wrote that wonderful arc, that two-parter of Cagney, with her father dies and she falls into the hands of the bottle. She'd always been drinking. All those 7 years she'd been drinking.
Yeah.
But she was sort of funny. That's how we played her. She was flippant and funny. And so when we had to call her on her disease, it became more difficult. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who that Cagney was.
Mm. Sharon, I'm trying to sort of explain what I find particularly fascinating about your memoir. I guess it's the fact that you don't immediately start telling us about Sharon Gless, the actress, but you're telling us about Sharon Gless, the child, the little girl, the baby, in fact, the family situation, I would call it abuse, or certainly very difficult conditions that you were forced to accept, boarding schools and so on, where you didn't want to go.
Right. I was never abused physically, ever.
No, you were not. No, but you had a very strict grandmother, didn't you?
Very. Yes, she was the most powerful person in my life.
Yes. And I certainly know abuse, but certainly her will was very strong.
Oh, thank you for noticing that, because she ran my life. And she had the money. She held the purse strings. So that was power also. She's the one who put me through the private schools and the debutante years and was always minding my manners and teaching me to walk properly. And I never did get that right. But she was she was very strong.
Sharon, there was a moment when you write, and I can't remember how old you were when that happened. I believe you were in boarding school at the time, mm-hmm. when you said, "I learned to feel dead inside."
Yes.
And not to show it on the outside. And to me, that was such a powerful realization of what you could do, how you could hide your feelings. And in a way, would you say that may have been the beginning of your awareness that you can act?
I don't know if I was aware of the fact that I could act then. I'd wanted to act all my life when I was a little girl, and then I dropped the dream. But the pain was so excruciating when my parents divorced and we sold our family home in which I was raised. Everything I knew and loved had ended. And I was in this boarding school, and I would get in trouble from the nuns if I was caught writing my mother a letter, when I was supposed to be sleeping, or if I was crying all the time. So I just learned to hide my feelings and to go, I guess, what I call dead inside. But it was a great, Elena, it was a great gift. It was a great gift because it saved me. It saved me. And I can still do it if I have to.
When would you do it? When would you choose to do it?
If I got in trouble at school and they were going to call my grandmother and have me removed from school, innocent trouble, but just young girls in a convent school, for God's sake. And not being able to see my father and not believing the lies they were telling me about him, which ended up not being lies, by the way. My family were not liars, but I thought the stories they were telling me couldn't possibly be true. You know?
Sharon, what I also love about your memoir is how very, very sexy it is.
Really?
It's just so open. Yes, it's very sexy. It's very, you have a real gift to write about what it feels like to be in love, to be attracted to someone, to have sex of all kinds. And you do it really, really well.
That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. Thank you. That no one has ever said that to me. Thank you. Anyway, continue.
Well, I think you show that talent in the way you play various roles and the way you evolved as an actress, from one role to another. They are so different. You will not be surprised if I tell you that I'm in love with Madeline Weston, played by Sharon Gless in
In Burn Notice?
Yes. Obviously, I binge watched that as well.
Thank you so much.
I absolutely love Madeline Weston.
Thank you.
Queer as Folk, Debbie Nowotny. I mean, every one of those women is completely different. And in the book, you describe how for many of these parts, you tried to kind of invent your own backstory for them.
Yes.
What would they wear? What happened to them? And I feel that shows that you are very much a writer. It's almost like writing a novel about a person like that.
Oh my goodness. I mean, what you said makes sense to me now. But how nice. I did always develop a backstory for the characters I played. I needed to know from whence they came so I'd know how they would react to a situation. We all react differently to things because of where we came from. Our reflexes are different.
And do you have a technique for this, or a special way of applying your instinct? How to feel who this particular woman is? Where does she come from? Or is it just your imagination? Obviously,
it's my imagination, I guess, is a good word. I find out as much as I can from the writers if there is a backstory that's going to be, dwelled upon in the present. But given a backstory or a past, I just imagine who they have become because of it and how they will react to what they're about to go through. I guess my imagination is fertile.
Of course. And when you played on stage, you played in London, didn't you, a few times?
3 times I did. I created the role of Annie Wilkes in Misery on the London stage.
Yeah.
With Bill Patterson. What a dream.
Yeah.
Bill Patterson. And then I did Chapter 2, Neil Simon's Chapter 2 with Tom Conti. Another dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a play I produced called A Round-Heeled Woman, about a woman who takes an ad out in her late 60s asking for sex. Uh-huh. It's based on a true story. I optioned a book and was fortunate enough to get a British writer and a British producer to come on with me, and we took it to the West End.
So what do you think of London?
Oh, it's my favorite city. I love London. I'm old enough to have been taught in school here in America that we came, from the British. And I was familiar with the buildings from my school books. And I felt my background very much so when I was there. I'm mainly Irish, but still, I have a quarter English in me. But just from what I was taught in school, I felt like I was home when I got off that plane and saw those buildings. And it's just, it's a wonderful, wonderful city. And they've always welcomed me. And I look forward to going back again one day.
I hope you do. And Sharon, there are many fascinating women characters in your book, in your memoir. And some of them, to me, I feel like they could be the protagonists of a film or a play just about them. So one of them, for example, is your grandmother, that's for sure.
Right. Oh, you mean a film about her? Yes.
Yeah, a film about her, very interesting. But also Monique James, what do you think?
Well, Monique James really, and my grandmother was the first most powerful woman in my life, and Monique James was the last. She's the one woman who discovered me. She signed me to the Universal, and then after 10 years of being at the studio, she became my manager. She left the studio and handled just me. And so funny, I'd prepared a different chapter for you when I thought I was going to be reading for you. And I had prepared the one about her. And it ended strangely, and we were so close. It was probably abnormal. We were just so close. She took me from being a nobody and turned me into an award-winning actress. At Universal, she used to make me go into a screening room and watch my work and tell me what was wrong with it. And
what would she say, for example? What kind of feedback would you get from her?
The best lesson I ever got as an actress was from her in that screening room. She said, I want you to watch this film. And I said, I watched it. And I said, okay. She said, you look like you're waiting to say your line. I said, I was waiting to say my line. She said, Sharon, I know, but that isn't what I want to see on your face. You clearly do not have your dialogue down. I know it's nerves. You're a beginner. This is your first time on camera. But she said, I want you to listen with everything you have to the actor who is talking to you. She said, when you learn to listen, really listen, don't wait for your line. When you really learn to listen to that actor, your face becomes alive. Everybody, when they really listen, they respond with their face, while they're absorbing the information. And she said, and then the camera is going to cut to you even though you're not talking, because your face is going to actually show your feelings, and your response to him will be much more interesting. Because depending on how he says it to you is how you're going to repeat it back.
This is a really brilliant insight, because actually this listening to the other person, listening to others, is what makes your memoir so powerful. Because it's not just about you, it's about the people you connected with, and you always saw them with you. You didn't just feel things yourself, you felt things and you understood things in relation to others. And this really comes through beautifully in the book.
Oh, what a compliment. Thank you so much. Well, that must come from what we do innately do, is listen to other people.
Yeah.
But when I was first on film, she said, you're not listening to him. You're just waiting for him to finish so you can say your line.
Was there any other character in your life, in the memoir, that you think might be a great protagonist for a movie just about them?
Do you mean the character that an actor was playing, a man was playing, or a real person that I knew?
A real person.
Yes, my brother.
Which one?
My brother, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
My older brother, Michael. He and I were very close. And my brother became, his background was similar to mine, where he had to be my father, and he was only a 2.5-year age difference, but we were just connected, so connected. And he became a trial attorney. And in America, I think our trial attorneys are the best actors we have. Mm-hmm. So he became an actor in his own way. But he also took care of my mother and took care of me and my younger brother. And he was very funny, very witty. And he's very ill right now, so it's a painful time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, his life, I think, would be very interesting. The responsibility he had to take on as a young boy, and then this brilliant trial attorney he became.
Another very interesting idea would be two actresses, Tyne Daly and yourself, playing Cagney and Lacey. And so this relationship existing on screen, but also off screen, and the difference between them. I think that would be fascinating.
Well, when Tyne and I were shooting together, we were shooting 22 hours a day. I mean, we didn't have time to be friends. After we would wrap every day, I would go into she'd come into my trailer because I had the bar. And we would run the next day's dialogue, and we'd get it down. And any problems we had, we'd call a writer in, even if it was 2 a.m. So she and I didn't have time to be pals. Our job was to just keep that series accurate and good and honest. So it was after we stopped Cagney and Lacey that she and I became very close friends. I had dinner with her all the time.
I love how, in the chapter that you read at the beginning, when you describe staying on the lot longer than anyone else, not going home the way everyone else did, staying later and going home in the dark and when there was no one else there. It's so moving because that was your life. You loved your life.
It was, my dream was coming true, Elena. This studio just took me. I was an unknown with no experience, and they were paying me to act. And I was just so grateful and so excited. And I say this immodestly, I knew they were right. I did have something, I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was something I wanted to do, and they were going to pay me. I only made $186 a week. I mean, we made nothing as contract players, but I don't care. I would have paid them.
You haven't lost that. You still seem very excited and grateful and committed to this thing that is acting. I absolutely love it. And your book shows it so, so beautifully. So,
Memoir. Elena.
Oh, sorry, I mustn't forget. I have a very important question, Sharon. Whose genius idea was it to list roasts on the back cover of your book rather than quotes?
Oh, a fellow writer friend of mine. I have the paperback in front of me, so I don't have the quotes in the back.
They are absolutely hilarious.
But she said, call your... Right. Some of them, those people did say. And some of them, this friend wrote for me, and they got to pick which one they wanted.
Like...
It was a genius idea, so and it was not my idea.
Jane Lynch, Sharon wrote a book.
I know, Sharon wrote a book. I said different suggestions to Jane, and Jane didn't know me as well as all the other people. The other people knew me very well. And Jane didn't know me as well, but I was a huge fan of hers. Yeah. And she said, I don't know you well enough. to write the critique. So can I take the one Sharon wrote a book? Sure, it's yours. Yeah.
It's wonderful. And it's so self-deprecating. And, you often
Yes.
are in the book as well. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's very funny, very moving. Thank you again so much. And thank you so much for this conversation, Sharon Gless, with Shop Talk with Writers.
Oh, Elena, you've been a wonderful, wonderful interview. Thank you so very much for your work. Thank you.
This was Shop Talk with Writers. Our guest today was the award-winning American actress Sharon Gless, telling us about her superb memoir, Apparently There Were Complaints. The memoir is published by Simon&Schuster, and it is also available as a beautiful and award-winning audiobook on Audible, narrated by the author herself. I'm Elena Lappin. Thank you for listening to Shop Talk with Writers.